We are just over 1 month away from Creative Assembly's largest and most hyped release, that is Total War Warhammer 3. No doubt the partners in the program will soon have access to a build, and I imagine that in about 2.5 weeks, we'll start seeing all the things, campaigns, breakdowns, guides, all leading up to launch on February 17th. Hello everybody, this is Havoc, and since taking a job inside the gaming industry with Hooded Horse, I'm starting to see the matrix in a way with Creative Assembly's videos and blogs, scanning and digging to see what all has or hasn't been shown off. And that's what I want to take a look at today, as there is a lot of expectations with this final game of the Warhammer trilogy. In the manner of late with front-loading information, I want to dig into a handful of key changes Warhammer 3 needs to have, starting with improved sieges. We've seen a taste of those already, and how important the siege experience is to the success of the game. I'll then go into a minor spiel regarding one's ability to customize garrisons and what that would do for the player experience as well. I'll move on to talk about some UI and UX improvements I hope to see in the game to better condense and display information, sliding in sensational Slaneshi style to diplomacy and what might lie there so seductively. Lastly, I'll touch on the peak of player customization within Total War, an army painter, why this seemingly unimportant mechanic would change how the community engages with the game, Creative Assembly, and each other, that would further incentivize those outside the usual player base to grab a copy for themselves and give it a go. Before we begin, a quick request. If you enjoy or agree with any part of this, be sure to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's dive into 5 key changes we need for Total War Warhammer 3. Sieges in the Warhammer franchise have always been a bit disappointing. Major settlements don't have 4 walls. Maps for those major settlements are rather small, making large armies quite congested and ensuring that as an attacker, nearly every tower is occupied and firing at you throughout the entire battle. And minor settlements? Whoever thought that making minor settlement battles just regular land battles made a huge blunder in my opinion. So, sieges in Warhammer 3 need to impress at all levels for both major and minor settlements. Now, we've seen a siege in action on the official Creative Assembly YouTube page, and in fact, I have a video breaking it all down if you want to check it out. Basically, for major settlements, there are some good things about them in this one specific city. A much larger space to have some really big battles inside the walls, multiple levels, Thrones of Britannia style, even bridges where ranged units can cause some havoc. See what I did there? There's also the supplies construction rally point system in play now, which I have mixed feelings about, but will still create some cool strategies that will hopefully force players to think a little bit about the future and really have to make strategic decisions in how to approach sieges on both offense and defense. The fact that minor settlement sieges are now actual settlement battles is a huge step forward, and I applaud Creative Assembly for finally stepping up and bringing Warhammer into the standard of every previous Total War game. My hope and desire for this improved siege system is that it will create a slower and methodical siege experience for the player. All too often, sieges in this series are just something to get through so the player can move on to the next part of their campaign. Too often, they're hindrances to the player and not altogether enjoyable. We need sieges to be just better than they are right now, and hopefully Warhammer 3 can deliver on it for the sanity of all of our campaigns. Riding along with sieges and their mechanics is something that hasn't been confirmed whatsoever, but I would love to see implemented, and that's a customizable garrison system. This is a feature I've wanted since Rome 2 Total War, and if there's a game that would benefit from being the first to show it off, it should be Warhammer 3. To be quite frank, I don't have a terribly huge problem with the current garrison system. It's functional. Sometimes it doesn't make sense in its composition, but ultimately it's just basic. But what if the player could choose their units? And here's the benefit. Without a doubt, the AI will still recruit certain unit types en masse, with certain factions obviously focusing on different areas of unit types. What if, say playing as Cathay, you notice that any Chaos force that throws themselves at the Great Bastion constantly fields armies weak to ranged attacks? And what if that specific settlement had some fantastic shooting galleries to fully utilize those ranged units? Under the Warhammer 2 system, you might only get 3 to 4 archers with your upgraded settlement out of a 12-unit garrison. With the ability to customize garrisons, you can now field way more ranged units based on your building chains and your settlement layout, and use melee troops as defensive lines to keep those archers safe. To satiate both those who care and those who don't, make it toggleable in some fashion. You can choose to customize your garrison or let the computer make the army comp for you like it already does, allowing the player to take each settlement, major or minor, and tweak it to fit the type of sieges they want to play, depending on their surroundings, would make sieges even more awesome and much less of a pain, as they can cater to specific areas instead of having just the standard XYZ units like we currently have now. It wouldn't be a true video on this channel if I didn't talk about potential user interface and user experience improvements. While I will totally agree that Warhammer 2 has some of the best UI in the Total War franchise, the dive into fantasy and the inclusion of magic, unit encompassing health bars, a massive amount of buffs, debuffs, and just an overload of information means that I am often overwhelmed when playing Warhammer. And one of the things I've heard several times is that it's typically hard to transition from historical to Warhammer for that reason. It is my biggest struggle, if I'm being completely honest. What we need in Warhammer 3 is both an expansion of access to information, but in a format that can and should be condensed, more than what's already present in Warhammer 2. Again, I think the UI and UX are great in this second game, but there's always room for improvement. I'm going to pull from Crusader Kings 3 here. There's just a ton of information you have to access in that game, yet through a very simple set of menus, fantastic tooltips, typographic hierarchy, and color schemes, that info is digestible and comprehensive. It's that type of purpose that Warhammer 3 should adopt, and I think they've really nailed it so far when it comes to battles, at least from what we've seen in blogs and videos. For example, hotkeys for finding idle units is huge. Cannot tell you how many battles I played where a unit comes back from a route and is just sitting in the corner of the map chilling because I kind of forgot about them. Formations from 3 Kingdoms is fantastic and it auto-saves into future battles. Spells can now automatically toggle slow-mo, allowing the player to really focus where they want to place them for maximum effectiveness. Unit health bars have ticks denoting percentages of health left, making it easier to eyeball when a unit might see some debuffs. There are loads of stats and unit panels that, hopefully, will give you a great breakdown of the current situation without overwhelming you. What's not seen so far, at least I don't believe, is the campaign side of things. There is public order. Well, I mean, it's control as it's been relabeled, but there are control bonuses at certain levels from previous Warhammer games. Break those levels down into tiers, physical tiers, so I know how close I am to enacting them. Show me the income change when I hover over a building and my building change, or better yet, show me the control change and income stats live when I hover over anything. Break down campaign systems like this in greater detail. Also, make more custom user interfaces for factions. The border UI is great and all, but if I'm playing Nurgle, I want everything to look diseased, or Kislev needs that hard northern ice feel. CA repeatedly plays on faction-specific UI in Warhammer 1 and 2, but I really want them to take it a step further with Warhammer 3. And lastly, Creative Assembly is no doubt hoping that Warhammer 3, in many ways like Crusader Kings 3, will bring in people new to the franchise entirely, so it needs to be as approachable as possible without alienating the community that's already developed it. Diplomacy is one section I would say really needs to have some changes for Warhammer 3. And I'll put it bluntly, we need the 3 Kingdoms or Troy diplomacy in Warhammer 3. While not perfect, it's the best diplomacy system we've had in Total War, and it'd be a huge mistake not to get it in this title. Of course, it will look pretty different from those 2 games. 3 Kingdoms features ancillaries that were tradable for extra resources, and I can't see Warhammer 3 having those in any real form, as there is some massive item bloat I've noticed in Warhammer 2 especially. Plus, that side of diplomacy was rather broken in 3 Kingdoms with stone pigs going for absurd amount of money. And since we don't have the split up resources like in Troy, any trades or agreements that might occur would be limited to money only, which is kind of a bummer. Although again, that system was somewhat borked, and the thought of every faction hitting me up for trades every single turn is very off-putting. Now hopefully they fix that. And although I just want a more in-depth experience with diplomacy, the Diplo scene has never felt truly impactful in the Warhammer series, and I more often than not just didn't even attempt to engage in it no matter what faction I was playing as. While I certainly understand, given the setting of the game, if CA wants to truly give us a sandbox experience with Warhammer 3, they'll definitely up their game with diplomacy. The last must-have change in Warhammer 3 is an army painter, and it goes way beyond just giving us an unreal amount of customization. Allowing the player to fully customize the color of armor, stylistic variations regarding symbols, accessories, weapons, it would do so many good things for the game itself and for CA as a whole. First, it gives players freedom they've not experienced unless they played Shogun 2's Avatar Conquest. They could custom create their own wild imaginations for each and every faction, and it would be something 100% optional on top of it. I'd even be okay with certain colors unlocking via objectives or campaign quests, even some unique skins, as it were, by conquering factions in the campaign. All for free, mind you. Now imagine having orc-style armor on a Slanesh unit, or ogre sporting corn helmets or chaos weapons that match their unit type. It'd be super cool to see. Second, and building on the first, it would create so much community engagement. Take those custom skins into the multiplayer scene and watch two completely cosmetically customized armies fight each other, and then let other people see that madness that you've created. Reddit, Twitter, the Total War forums, all showing off their concoctions of troops and the stories behind why they made them. Everyone would want to display their armies for the world to see. This then leads to the third thing, outside engagement. Remember, CA wants to bring in new people. It's in their best interest to make a game as enticing as possible for those who maybe have never heard of Total War Warhammer, or even Total War in general. Get the community posting their custom armies all over the place, and you bet you'll draw in people. Imagine giving a Warhammer tabletop player the ability to custom make their favorite army and see that in Total War battles. Pretty cool thing to think about. I personally think the army painter is the least expected out of all of these, but good lordy, would it be a smart move by CA if they did have it in there. To wrap this up, we most likely won't know what made the cut until the Total War partners start releasing content, which is of course unknown, but expected in around 2 or 3 weeks before release, based on their previous titles. However, I really do believe that these are some desperately needed changes to elevate Warhammer 3 from a Warhammer 2 Plus to an actual standalone, truly successive title. Thank you all so very much for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, be sure to give it a thumbs up, sub to the channel, and turn on bell notifications. I'd love to read your thoughts in the comment section below, and if you want to pre-order the game, know that you can do so using the Nexus GG link in the description. It goes a long ways towards supporting this channel. Be on the lookout for more Warhammer 3 videos as time approaches release on February 17th. This is Havoc, and I'll see you all in the next one.